Welcome back, everyone. In today's Making Their Case, it's a good one. Should words written 20 years ago be held against someone running for political office today?
Tamara, that's the issue affecting Republican Bob McDonnell, a candidate for governor in Virginia. In his graduate school thesis at Pat Robertson's Regent University, McDonnell, a former Virginia Attorney General, wrote this, quote, "Every level of government should statutorily and procedurally prefer married couples over cohabitators, homosexuals, or fornicators. The cost of sin should fall on the sinner, not the taxpayer." McDonnell went on to write that, quote, "Working women are a detriment to the family." Working women, of course, are a key voting bloc for any candidate. McDonnell is currently leading in the polls, but could this become a central issue? And should it be? Here to make their case, on the left, Tim Fernholz, writing fellow and blogger for the American Prospect, and on the right, Amanda Carpenter, reporter and blogger for the Washington Times. Tim, you start. Why should this be an issue? It happened 20 years ago.
Well, it's different from your usual, paper written by a politician as a student. He was 34 years old when he wrote this. He was getting his master's degree at the time. And he's continued in his record as a Virginia state legislature to pursue some of the policy points that he outlines in this paper. The question now is whether he still holds to those views. And this morning he released a statement saying that he had moved on, but not really specifying where and how. And even as we speak, he's on a conference call with reporters talking about these issues. So I think it's clear that the campaign is worried that these statements will hurt him with moderate and independent voters here in Virginia.
And in fact, here is the statement that he issued today, at least earlier today. He said, "Virginians will judge me on my 18-year record as a legislator and attorney general and the specific plans I've laid out for our future, not on a decades-old academic paper I wrote as a student during the Reagan era and haven't thought about in years." Amanda, I think you would agree that a lot of Republicans, though, were not thinking, even during the Reagan era, that working women were a detriment to the family. So is what McDonnell is saying now, is that enough?
Well, he did use the word detriment, but I think it is important to look at it in context. He was talking about why he opposes giving tax credits for the purpose of child care because it would destroy the family unit. I mean, he did say that it would be a detriment to kind of get children acclimated to being cared for outside of a parental unit. But, words do matter. This is important, and this kind of stuff comes up. It came up with Hillary Clinton. It came up with Jim Webb, Virginia senator, with his fictional account that contains some very graphic sex scenes. And, the voters of Virginia decided that Jim Webb's record was more important than a fictionalized account. And so Virginia voters will again have to decide if this academic paper has any bearing on the race today when they have a strong record to look at, which I think is the right argument for the campaign to make.
Amanda, in the polling, he's been doing very well over Democratic candidate Creed Dietz. I know he likes to say in the statement that, I shouldn't say he likes to say, he says in the statement he was a student, but he was 34 years old. It wasn't a youthful indiscretion. Do you believe he's in trouble?
I don't think he's in trouble because he's up double digits in the polls. I mean, we'd have to look at the polling and see what kind of impact.
Before this came out.
Right. We'd have to see what kind of impact this has made. But double digits. The Washington Post had McDonnell up 54% to 39% among likely voters, and we're getting close to the election. Obviously, the Dietz camp wants this to be a game changer. At this point, I don't think it is.
Well, in fact, here's what the Dietz campaign responded today with on this issue. It says it shows just how to the mainstream McDonnell is. He is out of touch with most Virginians. This paper laid out very specifically his vision for the role of government. I guess I'm just sort of confused, Tim. If you had an opportunity to talk to Bob McDonnell today and to ask him, what did you mean, what would you say? What would be your concern?
I guess I would wonder about him not thinking about it for 20 years, because the reason this came to light was that he mentioned it in an interview with Washington Post reporters, saying that he wrote his thesis on welfare policy as a way of establishing his credentials as a policymaker. And now that this thesis has been discovered, it seems like he's trying to back off of it. I guess I would ask, if he really did think that working women are detrimental, if he really did think that homosexuals should be punished, and if he thought that the sort of very strong restrictions on abortion or the pursuit of covenant marriage, or one of my favorite quotes from the report was that he said that the civil leaders are ministers of God. And I think, I'm not sure that a lot of independent Virginia voters are very comfortable with their government being a tool of the religious right, less than a way for people to get things done and solve problems. And that's Bob McDonnell's campaign thus far has been focused on the economy, as has Creed Dietz, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Dietz campaign is going to be able to knock McDonnell off message and force him to talk about these things that might be less appealing to voters right now.
Because Amanda, when you think about it, a 34-year-old saying, married couples should be preferred over cohabitators, homosexuals, or fornicators, that the cost of sin should fall on the sinner. When he was 34 and saying that, is it likely that that kind of language and that rhetoric is still a part of his mindset? And maybe I should ask you, how does he clear this up besides saying that this was something written when he was 34, 20 years ago?
Well, I think if it was on the forefront of his mind, you'd be hearing more rhetoric like this on the campaign trail. I believe the first person to talk about abortion during the campaign was Mr. Dietz, and there's no doubt that Mr. McDonnell has been accused by conservatives of ducking social issues, and he'll probably have to talk about them in light of this paper that came out. But I think the campaign would tell you, and they're probably on the conference call right now, saying, look at the record, look at the percentage of bills that he has supported that deal with abortion versus, say, things like public safety. And that's probably a very strong argument to Virginia voters, because they feel like they know him, they've read about him in the papers, and he's not giving these crazy right-wing zealot kind of quotes in the press.
Interesting stuff. Amanda Carpenter and Tim Fernholz, thank you both so much. We appreciate it. And Tamron, you know, I agree with Amanda to a certain point, but I think a lot of voters do sometimes get their information about a gubernatorial race in an off year, sometimes by reading about it in the paper. Right. And this is one of the biggest pieces we've seen on this campaign. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out.
And it is interesting that, I mean, one of the articles pointed out that this was not leaked out. It wasn't as if the Democrats in that state dug this up and tried to throw this at the front door of this candidate. He brought it up in an interview saying that he'd done his thesis on welfare, and then reporters looked it up and found these interesting and very controversial, and some might even say hateful, comments from him. So,
and it means, Tamron, that I want to see his thesis, footnotes, and bibliography, because I want to know what he was reading to put together that paper.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We'll see if the polling is affected by this, and we'll continue to follow.